We got a big night for you, my friends. Welcome to the beautiful, esteemed San Diego jury represented here tonight for this beautiful evening, Hakel evening, an evening of unity, an evening of pride, and an evening of great celebration. Pay attention, I'm going to share with you a study. Recent studies have shown that the least, most likely, minority group in the world to riot and demonstrate and burn and pillage when hate is focused towards them is the Jewish people. The Jewish people, we will not riot and demonstrate and burn buildings down. They're perfectly good buildings. Why burn it down? We'll buy the building. We'll buy the area around the building. We'll rezone it, and we'll make a profit. We Jews do it our way. And if you don't believe me, my friends, I give you Exhibit A. As you drove up tonight, making a right off of Pomerada Road, what was the name of the street you drove on? CHABAD Center Drive, the first development on this side of the 15 to build and transform a forest into a beautiful land of spirit and meaning. We have the great blessing to have with us in San Diego. May he live and be well, be strong and healthy. Our head shliach, the director of CHABAD, 25 institutions in San Diego, Rabbi Fratkin, who understood the dream of a better tomorrow, together with a magnificent team of 25 young couples, together with our wives, the CHABAD Shluchim, who represent every beautiful corner of Jewish San Diego. Rabbi Fratkin with his team have transformed San Diego, have rezoned the area, have repurposed this town, and have made San Diego the beautiful village, the beautiful home, the beautiful city that it is. Let's give them all a big round of applause. I'd like to take a moment tonight before we begin with our program to stop and take note of the amazing partners that we have in CHABAD. To Alan and Rochelle, to your beautiful family, to your children, to Richard and Sharon Gabriel, to the whole team at Coleridge, your friendship has been nothing short of envious to those who see it. I can only wish and bless you, that your children, and now I'm already privy to the third edition, third generation, that your children's children and the continuity of your families shall be blessed with the same kind of friendship, unwavering commitment, the love and support, the passion and joy that you have with partnering with a better tomorrow. This truly is a gift of friendship that the world benefits from, that we can only wish back to you as well, and mostly that Hashem should continue to share His unconditional love, mirroring yours as well, for many long, healthy, happy years. Let's give them a round of applause. But of course, my friends, this thank you and appreciation extends to every single one of you. Those who could have made it tonight, and those, for whatever reason it is, couldn't have made it in person tonight. We stand here thanks to your friendship. All of you, are the best answer and the only answer to any hate that there could be in the world. I call you all 5-star generals in the IOF, the Israeli Offensive Forces. You offensively have committed yourself to going out and making sure there is a better and brighter Jewish tomorrow and a better and brighter world for all of mankind. Give yourselves a round of applause, my friends. Tonight, though, I want to take a moment to thank a very dear, special couple, personal friend of ours in La Jolla, and a personal friend of all of yours, wherever you are. You know who I'm talking about. Mr. and Mrs. Barry and Bridget Gallagher. Give them a round of applause. Barry, from the Milliken crew to every Jew, that's been the line that came and emanated from that home since the day I came to see you and Bridget holding hands and preparing for the next chapter of your lives together. Barry, Bridget's entire life was the well-being, the unity, the love, the family feeling of her family and the family of Jewish people. She loved nothing more than to see people celebrating life, getting together, living and being proud of who they are. I can see her beautiful smile, Dvorah Livsha Bat David, right here in the picture from heaven as she looks down and she says, tonight is a night in my honor. Tonight is my greatest dream. Barry, you're an amazing husband. You're an amazing Jew. You promised and pledged to live for two, and you're doing it every day of your life. Bridget is so proud of what you're doing for her and smiling, and I hope and I wish and I pray in the spirit of tonight's unity and the inspiration that will come out of this evening that Hashem should continue to bless you with all the resources you need to continue with the commitment you made to Bridget, to bring joy and unity and Jewish pride wherever it is, and starting with the joy, your own joy and your family's joy first. Let's give them and Dvorah Livsha Bat David a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I think tonight it's quite clear why we're here. We're here for one reason. We're here to make a statement. You out there can write the story, but we as Jews, we will always write the punchline. And the punchline will always be powerful, beautiful, joy-filled, and blessed for the Jewish people and for all of mankind and for all of humanity and time to be. Please rise and give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you for being you, and thank you for being the great friends that you are. Please rise and remain standing. I'd like to call upon, while you're still standing, Rabbi Karlbach from CHABAD of downtown, who takes care of all the international visits here in San Diego, does a phenomenal job. Please come forward to read for us a chapter of Psalms as we begin every evening with prayer.
Wow, the energy of the room is unbelievable. Look up to the screen. We have the power making prayers. We'll do 2 chapters of Tehillim. First one is going to be chapter 20. Lamanatseach Mizmor David. Yancha Adonai Yemsara Yisodeka Shemele Yaakov. Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh Umetzion Yisodeka. Yizkar Kol Minchasecha Vaylascha Yadash Chatzela. Yitein Lecha Levavecha Alatzascha Yemale. Neranina V'shuasecha V'shem Elohim Yigdoli Yemale Adonai Kol Meshalasecha. Ata Yadati Ki Yeshia Adonai V'shichoi Yaneu Mishmei Kodshay V'gvuros Yesh Yeminai Ele Varecha Ve'ele Vasusim V'anachnu V'shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskim Hema Koro V'nafalu V'anachnu Kama V'nisayda Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneu B'yem Karenu. That was just a prayer for all those that are unhealthy, that can use help. May they be healthy and well. Next, we will say the chapter of Tehillim of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's year, chapter 122. Shir Hamalois, LeDavid, Samachta, Be'oimrim Li, Beis Adonai Melech, Ondas Hoyer Raglenu, B'Sharayich Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Hapnuya, Ki'ir Shechubra Lo Yachta. Says from all Shvatim Shiftei Yah, Eidos, L'Yisrael, Ahodesh Hashem Adonai. Ki Shama Yashva Kisois, L'Mishpai Kisois, L'Veis David. Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim, Yishlalu Havayim. Yehi Shalom Lechelech, Shalom Bam Nasayim. L'man Achai V'Riyah Adaber Na Shalom Bach. L'man Beis Adonai Eloheinu, Havak Sha'atoiv Lach. May be seated. Is what we're here for. And the founder of CHABAD throughout the whole world, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, put a focus on the concept of Hakel, which is after the Shemitah year, after the 7th year, Jewish people would gather together for the sake of gathering to inspire and be strong with each other. So please put your eyes to the screen so we see a 5-minute message of the power of Hakel.
For the same purpose, to read God Almighty's Torah and to take upon themselves to fulfill it during all they give around.
It was the year of Hakel, Tavshin Memches. And the Rebbe inspired families and synagogues and groups, everyone, to make events and gatherings to bring in the masses, men, women, and children, to inspire them with the growth of Torah and mitzvahs. Rabbi Rafi Tenenhaus had a connection with the Miami Dolphins, two of the owners, and he worked diligently on getting them to agree to light the menorah. That Shabbos of Hanukkah, I walk up to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe pours a little mashke into my cup. And I turn around and I said, Mircha Hashem, Morgen bei Nacht, mit Vorkum, in Amesifis Hakel, and had Lakas Meir's ceremony, and the Miami Dolphins will spielen the Washington Redskins in Joe Rabbi Stadium for 70,000 Menschen. And the Rebbe says to me, "Darfst alle einladen." You have to invite them all, because everybody else would say at the end, they would say, "Alle seien eingeladen." But I didn't, because who would think to do such a thing for this type of an event? And the Rebbe instructed me that, hey, it's no different. You know, you got to invite everybody. And I turned around and I said, "Alle seien eingeladen." And I turned to the Rebbe and he's again in a big smile, and he gives me the bottle of mashke.
It was just past my 16th birthday. My brother Andy came home from college. So it was Sunday night to go to a big football game towards the end of the season. It was a very exciting opportunity for us.
We're in Miami, Florida, where the Miami Dolphins at 7-6 will face the 10-3 Washington Redskins.
The Miami Dolphins were really the biggest show in town. It was a packed crowd because it was a nationally televised Sunday night game. And then there's this announcement over the PA. They announced that it's Hanukkah, and the rabbis from somewhere are going to light the menorah. And lo and behold, this is the biggest menorah we'd ever seen. It was in the end zone. It was just massive. We looked at each other, my brother and I, like, oh yeah, it's Hanukkah. We totally missed it.
Das Pale und das Blut, das man nicht sagt, und das gut bringt in einer Tisch von einer Lied in den Jiras Hawaii.
When you go to public school and you grow up in South Florida in the 1970s and 80s, it was a different world. You didn't always feel comfortable, people knowing who you were. So it was a feeling of empowerment. It was a very proud moment for us to be witnessing that. We had never seen anything like it. Like, those were our guys in the end zone. And it was a great game. The Dolphins won, I remember that. It was a very proud moment for me and my brother. It was certainly one of the important stops on the journey that made me want to become more observant and delve deeper into my Yiddishkeit. Today, thank God, 6 children, Shalom Shabbos, Shalom Kashrus.
Und als Locherago und Floge bei jedem und bei jedem in Hakel des Rom und Anochi Vata, die mit Überlehim Baruch, aber die jede Tateston und Kennteston wird massiv sein in dem Kollegen, mit Kehl, mit Schwimmosse.
You never know who's watching. You never know who you're going to benefit, and you may never hear about it. You know, the spark is ready, it's waiting, and you might be the one to light it.
Hello, everyone. I have the great privilege of introducing Rabbi Jacobson this evening. So I had to prepare myself, you see. And I quickly came to discover that Rabbi Jacobson's resume is longer than both of my arms. So I had to decide what to say, what not to say. And so there's going to be a part of what I'm going to say, and then I'm not going to talk about of lectures or read thousands of articles of deep Torah thought. But what makes the yeshiva.net and Rabbi Jacobson so special is how he makes it applicable to the modern world, to the modern life. I'm going to give you all a guarantee this evening. And that is, he's going to be speaking about something that's hard to hear, right? Anti-Semitism. Usually you think about anti-Semitism and it's a downer. But Rabbi Jacobson, I guarantee this, is going to make us all feel uplifted. He has this ability to instill optimism, energy, motivation, positivity. I've had the great privilege of hearing him speak many times, and I'm never disappointed. Now what I'm not going to talk about. I was thinking about what inspirational words could I say to introduce Rabbi Jacobson. So, Rabbi Jacobson, I'm asking you a question, and everyone else. Have you ever heard of Sam Roy Yat District, Parchuap Khiri Khan, Thailand? You ever heard of that place? Well, it's heard of you, and this is how I know. On Friday, a friend who moved to Thailand maybe 10 years ago, a non-Jewish fellow who used to like to come and speak to me about spiritual matters from time to time. He got married to a woman, a Thai woman, and they moved, not Jewish, and he moved to Thailand. So he happened to have been in town. He stops by on this Friday, which of course is the best day for any rabbi to have a meeting, especially an unscheduled one. And he says, oh, I want to talk to you, I was thinking about you. And he went on to ask questions, and we had an interesting but short conversation. Anyway, he says, I think about you all the time. I said, well, what makes you think you're there in Thailand and you're in this place? I won't read it again because I don't know if there's a dentist in the crowd. But he basically says, well, I like going online and I like watching lectures from Rabbi Jacobson. So I said, wow, what an interesting coincidence. Would you like to come? We have Rabbi Jacobson coming Sunday night. He said, I would have been there, except his flight was out this morning, and I don't think his flight got canceled, Rabbi. So I just want to tell you, Rabbi Jacobson is going to inspire you, and he's really, I want you to tune in, focus, be in the moment, and we will all leave this evening enriched in a better place than when we came in. So without any further ado, Rabbi Jacobson, if you please.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I was in Miami for Shabbos, very meaningful Shabbos, and the flight was scheduled this morning, 8:50 a.m., to go from Fort Lauderdale to Houston, then 12:19 from Houston to San Diego, where I would land 1:45 p.m., which would give me a wonderful, relaxed afternoon to prepare for this grand event. So, as I wake up early in the morning to get to the airport, I see a message that according to the laws, the flight crew did not get enough sleep. And you can't have them sleep on the airplane. Because it's not like by a rabbi's sermon, where you could just, if you haven't had enough sleep, you come to shul, and you sleep at the sermon, and you hope the sermon goes a little longer, which usually rabbis don't disappoint. And you schluff, and it's all good. So the law says they need more sleep. So therefore, the flight is delayed from 8:50 till 9:26. Okay. I don't know what 38 minutes of schlaf is going to do, but fine. Ich vergin sie. I don't mind, they'll sleep a little longer. I also slept a little longer as a result. So I come to the airport, and we get on the plane, and we start moving. It's 9:26. Everything seems fine, and suddenly they announce there's a water leak. They discovered a water leak, and they need to fix the water leak. Okay? So about half an hour later, they fix the water leak. Then he says there's a lot of traffic. It's backed up, it's impossible to get out. But they may reroute us through Mexico. Okay, shine. I realized if we leave in the next few minutes, I'll arrive in Houston at 12:19, I can make my flight. At that moment, heaven decided to give us a Miami thunderstorm with lightning. The captain got on the mic and said, sorry, there's lightning. We're not going anywhere, not through Mexico, not through Mexico. We're staying here. I don't know when we're going to go. I don't know if we are going to go. At least 45 minutes we will stay here on the runway, and then I'm going to notify you what's going on. At that point I realized there's no way I'm making it to Houston for my flight. I decided not to share the news with CHABAD of San Diego. They were having a wonderful morning, and why do I have to ruin it? But I realized that this is probably not happening, and that's it. What should I do? I felt bad. So I start looking, if we do make it to Texas, is there a later flight from Texas to San Diego? A lot of stopovers. And the one non-stopover would be leaving at 6 and arriving after the event, so that wouldn't happen. So I'm looking and looking and looking, and Southwest has a flight, and they say 1 seat left. So I said, let me get it. So I get it, I fill credit card, everything, and when I do submit, sorry, you can't get it. Then the captain gets on and says, we don't know if we can go to Houston. So I'm thinking maybe I need a ticket straight from Florida to San Diego, because we don't even know if I'm going to Houston. So now I have to find a ticket straight from Florida to San Diego, which is not easy, and again the tickets are late. They're going to come 9:30 p.m., which is the time I already got to go back to Newark. So why do I have to come and then go back on the same flight? I could just give my speech in the hotel in the bed, listen to myself and give myself a standing ovation, which would be cheaper, and you guys thought you also would be able to stay home and go to sleep and have a normal evening, etc. Anyway, after 45 minutes he tells us we are going to Houston, and Southwest opened up a seat, and I bought my seat. And around an hour later we arrived in Houston, 3 hours late. I come to the airport, I have to catch my next flight Southwest. I go to the agent, where do I get Southwest? She takes a look, you're in the wrong airport. No Southwest for me, you got to go to another airport in Houston. I said, how far? She says, an hour. I'm like, Ribono Shalayla, Master of the Universe. Who thought of this idea of me coming to San Diego on Sunday evening? This is turning into a nightmare. And of course, the worst is no kosher food on the airplane. Can you imagine? They offered me 6,000 miles in Shekayach. How does 6,000 miles help a hungry Jewish stomach? 6,000 miles? More than 6,000 miles. Go eat on the moon? That's why I look so good today. There was no food. Okay, I can look better. We're working on it. The next flight. In any case, I rush out of the airport. I get into an Uber. Thank God there was no traffic. We made it in 38 minutes to the second airport instead of an hour. It was the middle of the day. I got onto the Southwest flight, and I landed here literally a few minutes before the event. And I'm here with which basically means that God wanted me to be here this evening with all of you, and I am thrilled, I'm honored, I'm privileged to be able to be part of this incredible community, this incredible hakel gathering of so many Jews, so many brothers and sisters, and also some brothers and sisters, non-Jews who are here. So many of you who are here this evening to come together to celebrate our past, our present, and most importantly, our future. Our Avar, our Hoivar Asid, and it's really a very moving sight to see. Last time I was here and spoke CHABAD of San Diego was approximately 2 decades ago. And you remember? Yes, was it a good speech? Okay, you brought me back. It took 20 years, but I won't talk about that at the moment. And it was 20 years ago, and it was very, very beautiful to see the growth over the last 20 years. Rabbi Rebbetzin Fratkin came here 47 years ago to build Yiddishkeit in San Diego. Today, to look at the growth after 47 years, to be able to see 25 powerful, thriving centers, blooming centers, building bridges between our brothers and sisters from so many different backgrounds and affiliations and walks of life and persuasions and different levels of knowledge and observance, with a sense of camaraderie and brotherly and sisterly love, in my mind, is nothing short than a human miracle. And I'm grateful to be able to see vividly this growth, not only to watch it on a video or hear it through the grapevine about the incredible work of CHABAD of San Diego and all of the 25 rabbis and rebbetzins who have built this incredible community, but to be able to see it, to feel it, and to be able to witness and experience the warmth, the vibrancy, and the sense of community, and the sense of togetherness and unity that you could palpably sense in this room this evening. So Mazel Tov, and thank you, and I want to thank Hashem, the pilot. I want to thank the creator of the world, the pilot of the universe, for deciding that I can be here this evening with you. It's a privilege, and to be able to serve, hopefully, as a conduit for the message of Judaism and of Torah and of God for our people in 2023. So a number of years ago, somebody asked me a question. The person didn't particularly love Jews so much. And he said, you know, what gives Jews a right to settle the land of Israel? You're not really a nationality, you're a religion. And a religion is not connected to a country. There are Christians in Australia. There are Christians in San Diego. There are Jews who are Russian, French, Italian, South American, Mexican, West Coast Jews, East Coast Jews. You have Jews who are Italian Jews and Russian Jews and South African Jews. Judaism is a religion. It's not a nationality. A religion doesn't have to do with a country. Why are you guys in a country? Wherever you are, you're the same Jews, which means you're not a nationality. If you were a nationality, then Jews living in America shouldn't be considered Jewish, really. Their parents were Jewish. So I asked this fellow, I said, what would you consider a nation? He says the French are a nation. The Italian are a nation. The Greeks, that's a nation. It's an ancient nation. That's a nation. You're not a nation. You're a religion. You're an idea. An idea doesn't need a country. This is what he said. So based on an idea I once heard from the former chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Israel Meir Lau, who based it on a debate between Arnold Toynbee from Oxford and Dr. Jacob Herzog, ambassador of Israel to Canada in 1959 in McGill, I responded, I said, indulge me with this hypothesis. 3 Olympic airplanes land on our planet. The first Olympic airplane lands in Athens. An old man comes out of the airplane. He's greeted by somebody in the airport. Welcome to Greece. He looks at this old man. You could see he's used his brain. He was immersed in thought and philosophy. And he looks at him and he says, what's your name? The old man says, my name is Socrates. He says, what brings you to Athens? He says, what brings me to Athens? He says, my city. Take me to the Acropolis. He says, for $8, I could show you some of the remnants of the Acropolis. He says, how is the Greek Empire doing? He says, sir, I don't know where you have been, but there's no Greek empire for 2,400 years. He says, you mean Greece doesn't rule the world? He says, no. He says, so what's Greece? He says, it's a country. What type of country? A member of NATO. Socrates says, what's NATO? He gives him a little lecture on NATO. He says, how is Greek philosophy doing? Is the whole world immersed in Greek philosophy? Are they studying the works of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle? He says, not really. There's a few professors who are into Greek philosophy. He says, so what do you guys talk about in salons and in cafes and in restaurants? He says, we talk about iPhone 12, iPhone 13, iPhone 16, iPhone 19, this schmata, that schmata. He says, why aren't you speaking ancient Greece? He says, very few people speak ancient Greece. We speak modern Greece. He says, take me to Mount Olympus. He says, there's nothing there. Take me to Zeus. Nobody prays at Zeus. He says, so what do you pray to? He says, we have the Greek Orthodox Church. He says, well, it's an old story. He says, tell me. He says, well, I'll sum it up very briefly. So every Jewish boy who grows up in the home of a Jewish mother is told by his mother not only that he's God's gift to humanity, but that he is God himself. However, most Jewish boys are lucky enough at some point to marry a Jewish woman. And within a few months, usually within a few weeks, sometimes within a few hours, she makes it very clear to him. He's not God. He's not God's gift to humanity. The question is if he's entitled to an opinion. Most Jewish men that I know are in therapy. And most of the therapy sessions are basically negotiating the view of his mother versus the view of his wife. Mom thought and told me I was God. My wife is not sure. I have a right to think. Have an opinion. That's with Jewish men who get married. But Yoshka never got married. So his mother's opinion remained. And billions of people believe his mother. Socrates says, this is not my Greece. I'm out of here. Boom. Another plane lands in Rome. Out comes a statesman. He has some wounds on his chest. You can see that he's a warrior and a military giant. Man in the airport comes up and says, welcome to Rome, what's your name? He says, my name is Julius Caesar. The man in the airport says, from the Caesar salad. Your family owns the Caesar salad? He says, in the good days, I would behead you for such a comment. Julius Caesar, the emperor of Rome. Does the word Rome not drive fear and dread into everybody's heart? He says, sir, no. He says, what's with the Roman Empire? He said, it's gone for 1,800 years, thanks to Constantine. He says, what's Rome? It's a city. Where? In Italy. What's Italy? A country. What's a country? A member of NATO. Just take me to the Colosseum. He says, for $7, I'll show you the excavation. Take me to the Senate and the steps of the Senate where I utter those words, Et tu, Brute, then Caesar falls. He says, there's no Senate, there's no steps of the Senate. Take me to my gymnasium. For $6.50, I'll show you what they have from your gymnasium. Take me to the gladiators. The gladiators are gone. Why aren't you speaking Latin? He says, very few people speak Latin. We speak Italian. He says, what are you guys known for? He says, lasagna, pizza, pasta. He says, take me to pray at Jupiter. He says, who prays at Jupiter? He says, where do you pray? He says, we have the Vatican. What's the Vatican? Catholicism. What's Catholicism? The Pope. What's that? Successor of Christianity. Caesar says, what's that? He says, I'll tell you a story. Every Jewish boy grows up in a house. His mother tells him he's God. Julius Caesar looks at him and says, this is not my Rome. I'm out of here. And he leaves. A third airplane lands in Tel Aviv.
An old man comes out of the airplane and somebody in the airport comes up to greet him. And he says 2 words, Shalom Aleichem. The old man responds, Aleichem, Shalom. He looks at the old man and he says in Hebrew, Ma Shimcha, what is your name? The old man says, my name is Moshe. Moshe. And the man in the airport says, Gamani Moshe. Gamani, I'm also Moshe. I'm Moshe from Tbilisi, Georgia. Made Aliyah 9 months ago and they ripped me off already. And I'm looking for an investor. Maybe you want to invest in my company. I need an investor so we can make some money together. And if you don't want to invest, I anyway could use a donation and a contribution and some charity. And the man looks at him and he says, Moshe, you're from Tbilisi. And he says, yeah, where are you from? He says, I'm from Egypt. He says, what brings you here? He says, I came home. He says, have you ever been here before? He says, no. He says, so why do you call it home? He says, 40 years. I tried getting into this place. 40 years. Trust me, I have the right to call this place home. And then Moshe from Tbilisi says, Moshe from Egypt, welcome home. And Moshe from Egypt says, I have a question to ask. You know, my friend Socrates and Julius Caesar, they were in such a rush. We didn't have a chance to take food. I'm starving. I'm starving. Any food in Israel? He says, of course. Every few blocks there's a restaurant. In fact, some blocks have a few restaurants. Moshe says, yeah, but I have a diet that's called kosher. Do they have that in Israel? He says, what's the question? In the airport itself, you have 70 restaurants. Most of them are kosher. Everywhere you have kosher Chinese and kosher Japanese and kosher Thai and kosher Vietnamese and kosher French. Every type of kosher. And you have every rabbinic supervision. You have this one, that one, Badatz and Rabbi Landau, and this Badatz and Eidach Redis and Badatz and everything. This is amazing. He says, one more thing. I was in a rush and I forgot from heaven to bring my talis, my talit, my prayer shawl, and my tefillin, my phylacteries. Do they have any of them in Israel? He says, oh, of course, now I'm starting not to like you. You think you're holier than thou. You think you're the only one who knows about kosher, talis, tefillin, of course. You think we don't know? He rolls up his sleeve. He says, look, I have the straps. You can see. In fact, right here in the airport, there's a CHABAD kidnapping center. Everybody who goes on the plane off, they kidnap. Literally, they slap you. And they all say, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. You're Jewish. Boom, boom. In, out. They put you on. They'll kidnap you too. They'll be happy to. He says, that's amazing. Wow. And Moshe comes down the steps. And they walk into the airport. And indeed, the kidnapping happens faster than he thought. And there Moshe sees a father and a son. As he walks in, Moshe from Tbilisi puts his hand on the door and kisses it. He says, what are you doing? He says, you don't know? He says, called a mezuzah. He says, what's that? He says, you don't know? There's another Moshe. A few thousand years ago, he told us to write chapters of the Torah on a parchment, a piece of parchment, and put it on our doorposts, on our homes, our bedrooms, our offices, and we kiss it when we walk in and out. And he gives it a kiss, and then he sees a father and a son waiting for their flight. The father opens up a Chumash, a Torah, a Bible, and he tells his son, also by the name of Moshe, he says, Moshe, read the verse. And little Moshe reads in Hebrew, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemar. And God spoke to Moses, saying, and 2 large diamonds, which you may call tears, stream down the face of Moses as he watches this father and son learning the Torah together. And I turned to my friend and I said, Sana, I want to ask you a question. If Julius Caesar comes back today to Rome, if Socrates comes back today to Athens, what do they find? Outside of being in the same geographical location, encountering the same soil, they don't find the same culture, values, faith, tradition, language, philosophy, God. that existed in their time. Almost nothing is recognizable, besides the fact that it's the same territory. But if Moses comes back to Israel today, what does he encounter? The same language, the same faith, the same God, the same traditions, the same Torah, the same mitzvahs. In fact, the same debates and arguments, the same foods. We ate matzah 3,500 years ago. We're still eating the matzah, and it tastes like it's 3,500 years. Let's face it. I know by the Seder, everybody says the matzah is delicious this year. Oh, big quiet. I still never saw anybody ask for matzah at the Viennese table of their daughter's bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah or wedding. The matzah is so delicious, why don't you serve it at your son's wedding? Big speaker. It's stale, and you know it's stale. It's supposed to be stale. It's 3,000 years old. In fact, the same ram's horn, the same shofar, the same ram's horn that's been giving Jews migraine headaches thousands of years ago is still giving Jews migraine headaches. The same lulav, the same palm branch, the same myrtle and willow, the same Shabbat, the same Torah scroll, the same tzitzis, the same tefillin, the same text of the Torah. So I say to him, you tell me the Italians are a nation. The Greeks, that's a nation. The Jews, not a nation. If Israel is not a nation, then you tell me what's a nation. Looked at me, he says, Rabbi Jacobson, I have to think about it. He's still thinking. Incredible. When you ask, where is Pharaoh? Where's Socrates? Where's Julius Caesar? And Caligula? And Pompey? And Vespasian? And Titus? And Adrian? And Tiberius? Where are they? Where's Haman? Where's Nebuchadnezzar? Where's Bogdan Khmelnytsky? Where's Alfred Rosenberg and Joseph Stalin? Where's Eichmann and Himmler? Where are these people? And the answer is, they're in Wikipedia. They're all in Wikipedia, everyone. That's where the Assyrians are, and the Greeks, and the Babylonians, and the Romans, and the Byzantines. And now you ask, where are the Jewish people? And the answer is, we created Wikipedia. And Google, and Facebook, and Waze, and Instagram, and Telegram, and we're soon buying off TikTok. I think they bought it off of them. We like to write the obituaries of our enemies. Right now, as I speak, if you're bored, you can go and edit Pharaoh. You can edit his obituary. You can edit the obituary of Haman. You can edit the obituary of Osama bin Laden. You can edit their obituaries. But it's not just that we like to survive them and edit their obituaries. We also like to eat them. Some of the greatest, most delicious Jewish foods come from our sworn enemies. Do you know that? We took Pharaoh and we turned him into a matzah ball. We took Antiochus and we turned him into a latke, for heaven's sake. We took Haman and we turned him into a hamantash. Now realize all these foods, kneidlach, matzah balls, hamantash, and latkes, they're all carbs. You realize? They're still killing us. Somebody asked me the other day, why do Jews eat so many donuts and latkes on Hanukkah? Now, this person wasn't Jewish, and I was not in the mood of giving the Jewish answer. You know the Jewish answer, right? It's too complicated. It's a Talmudic answer. It works good for Jews. Because the oil was supposed to burn for 1 night, and it burned for 8. So therefore, we soak the donuts in oil for 8 years. And the latkes in oil for 8 decades. And then we eat them for 8 days straight as a memorial to the oil that burned in the menorah for 8 days. Of course, you should eat latkes for the rest of your life until you can't breathe. Now for Jews, that's like perfect. That's logic. What's the question? The menorah burnt. Of course, I should eat donuts because oil. It's connected, especially if you do the numerical value of oil, the Kabbalistic meaning of oil. But this person was just not made for it. So I'm like, I need like a normal answer. So I said it's very simple. Hanukkah represents our victory over the Greeks. The Greeks were defeated and we won. The Greeks were into looks and fashion and Olympics. So how do we celebrate our victory against the Greeks? The answer is we eat foods that will ensure that we never, ever look like them. So, I just got it. But this is a question. How did that happen? Why is it that if Moses comes back today, almost everything will be recognizable, even the demonstrations? You know that in Israel they don't stop demonstrating, and you know they don't even know what they're demonstrating about. Now they're here about overhaul, to shield overhaul. So the other day at one of these demonstrations, a guy like needs a flag because you don't demonstrate without an Israeli flag. So he turns to another Jew and he says, "Can I borrow your flag for my demonstration?" The guy says, "Sure, but I need it back by Saturday." He says, "Why?" "Because I'm also demonstrating on the other side, and I also need a flag." So they literally gave him his flag for his demonstration. I'm like, this is exactly what Jewish demonstrations are like. They're borrowing flags from each other. It's confounding. You know what happened a few weeks ago in Bnei Brak? I don't know if you know. Tel Aviv is a very secular city. I mean, it has almost 600 shuls. People call it a secular city. A secular city. It almost has 600 shuls. That's like what a secular city is. But it has like 520 shuls, etc. But relatively to Bnei Brak, which is near Tel Aviv, it's a secular city. So they decided that they're going to demonstrate in Bnei Brak against the government and against what they call religious dictatorship. And they're going to demonstrate in Bnei Brak, which is an all-religious city. Whoever strategized the demonstration made a fatal mistake. He didn't realize it was Thursday night. Now, on Thursday night in Bnei Brak, there's a national Jewish food. It's called CHABAD. No, I don't know if you know this. Bnei Brak, Thursday night, wherever you go, somebody is eating CHABAD. So when the demonstrators came to Bnei Brak, the police warned, "Don't get close. This is going to be a pogrom. There's going to be beatings." They didn't realize that cholent supersedes everything. But what happened was the demonstrators come in with this fire in their eyes, and you know what the Bnei Brak residents did? They gave everyone cholent. Everyone. They gave cholent. And then somebody, the mayor, they had put on the loudspeakers Jewish songs. There was a clip that went around. They did a song. Shalom Aleichem. Did you see that clip? There was a fellow who was coming in to demonstrate. He was on a motorcycle, wrapped up in a flag. He's going to teach these religious Jews about reality. And suddenly he heard the song. And he got off his motorcycle. I kid you not, it's on a video, you can see it. And he started to sob like a baby. And he said later, 60 years he didn't hear the song. His father and mother would sing it every Friday night. And 60 years he didn't hear the song. He heard the song. It tells you something. So even the debates are the same. How did that happen? What's the secret? Friends, it's only the Holocaust happened 2 mortgages ago. Do you know that? 2 mortgages ago. It didn't happen a long time ago. Yeah, 2 mortgages ago, a little more. And certainly when I was a child growing up in New York, we thought that never again means never again. Who would even go back to such hate and bigotry? We thought the world was cured. The world was a better place. America was so kind to the Jews. Jews built their own beautiful country in Israel, our eternal homeland. And then, within living memory of so many Holocaust survivors, including one we have right here in our room, this room. people who were in Auschwitz, Birkenau, in Bergen-Belsen or Stuttgart, in the Warsaw Ghetto, or in Mauthausen had to hear Ahmadinejad get up and warn that in one day and in one moment he's going to wipe out 6 million Jews living in Israel. Because today in Israel, there are 6.7 million Jews. That number shouldn't be underestimated. In 1945, there were 600,000 Jews living in Israel. 1% of them were killed in the Independence War, 6,000. Today, there are almost 7 million Jews living in Israel. In a few years, more than half of the Jewish people are going to be living in Israel. That didn't happen since the days of King Solomon. Since the days of King Solomon, because the 10 tribes were exiled, and by the Second Temple, only 42,000 Jews came back from Iraq. King Solomon lived more than 3,000 years ago. This is an incredible phenomenon. And yet, despite all of this, with the miracles happening all around us, anti-Semitism reared once again its grotesque, its ugly, abominable head. And Jews are scratching their foreheads. Why? How? What are we supposed to do? The first recorded instance of anti-Semitism in the Torah is Moses, send him my love. Letland, Latvia. In Yiddish, Letland. Letland in Yiddish, Letland.
German,
Yes, yes. Moses is a young prince and he goes out. And what does he see? He sees an Egyptian beating a Jew to death. And what does Moses do? He looks here, he looks there. He sees there's no person. Vayaches HaMitzri. He strikes the Egyptian dead. Vayitmeneu b'chol, and he buries him in the sand. And he saves the Jewish slave from death. Here is an argument in the Midrash. Only Jews can argue about this. You know what the argument in the Midrash is? How did Moses kill him? Only Jews. It happened 3,500 years ago. How did he do it? I'm like, who cares? The guy is dead. Yizgadal v'yizgadash, Chevra Kadisha. What is this? The CNN? We're going to start investigating how the Jews are criminals. Moses is the criminal and the Egyptian is the righteous man because the Jew provoked him. And he should have gone to anger management to California instead of killing the Egyptian. What type? He killed him. The Medrash has 3 opinions. Do you understand? We know how to argue about everything. Don't you understand? I told a Christian friend, you guys are lucky that when you light your trees, you don't have our laws about lighting a menorah. You have to start from the right. But what happens if you start from the left? And what happens if it's the 3rd night, it's December 25th, and you only have 2.5 candles, and nobody's home? Do you light? And what if there's no window? Where do you put it? They would all commit suicide. And you're lucky. And Jews are busy. We know how to argue about everything. I once heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe myself. He said, why is it when 2 Jews meet, I say Shalom Aleichem, and what do you say? Aleichem Shalom. Why can't we just reciprocate? Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. Imagine in English I say, good evening, and you say, evening good. How are you? You are how? What's up? Up what's? But in Hebrew we do it all the time. Shalom Aleichem. No, Aleichem Shalom. And the Rebbe said, because when 2 Jews meet, even before they begin a conversation, they first have to establish that they disagree with each other. Shalom Aleichem, no! It's the opposite. Aleichem Shalom. Once they establish they have an argument, now they can hopefully begin a meaningful dialogue. Do you remember there was a great Kabbalist who lived in my side of town? He's already in paradise. His name was Jackie Mason. You remember? Great Kabbalist. He would repeat many of my jokes. So he once said, that was a joke. He once said, when two Jews meet, if within 3 minutes they don't establish a family connection, one of them is not Jewish. It's a fact. I say when two Jews meet, if within 2 minutes there's no argument, one of them needs to convert. So, Shalom Aleichem. So the Medrash has an argument. How did Moses kill the Egyptian? And there are 3 opinions. Opinion number 1 is with his fist. Opinion number 2 is he used a shovel. The slave was working with a shovel. He was building buildings for Pharaoh. He used a shovel. The 3rd opinion is, Rashi quotes, Shem HaMeforash. He used God's name. God's ineffable name has very deep mystical energy, and Moses uttered the name, and he snuffed out the soul of the murderer. And I ask you, why are the rabbis arguing 1,500 years after the story how it happened? The answer is very deep. It's a very deep argument. How are Jews supposed to respond to anti-Semitism? 3 opinions: a fist, a shovel, or God's name. And you know how I know this argument is important? Because Jews are still fighting about it. We still can't decide. Some of us scream the fist, others say the shovel, and others say God's name. And I believe it's our generation that has to make peace between these 3 opinions. The first opinion says a fist. Jews have been too weak and too defenseless for too long. They have to learn to be strong, powerful. The Talmud has an expression, Habola Hargach, Hashkim Lahargach. Somebody comes to kill you, you kill him first. In fact, there was a Jew sitting in Central Park in Manhattan. He was sipping on iced coffee and reading a newspaper, Wall Street Journal. It used to be the New York Times, but he's canceled the subscription. He went to the Wall Street Journal. He's drinking an iced coffee. A Gentile, an anti-Semite, comes over, smacks him in the face. Jew says, "What's that?" He says, "This is from Hamas." Poor Jew is bleeding. 5 minutes later, the guy comes back, punches him in the nose. "What's this?" "This is from Iran." A few minutes later, he comes back, shoves him in his neck. "So what's this?" He says, "This is from Hezbollah." Comes a few moments later, kicks him in his belly. "So what's this?" "This is from Syria." The poor Jew is maimed and wounded and bleeding. He gets up and he leaves. The anti-Semite is thrilled. He sits down, takes his iced coffee, takes his newspaper, and continues enjoying his day in Central Park. The Jew comes back 25 minutes later with a wrench. He goes over to this guy, knocks him over his head. As he's falling into unconsciousness, he looks to the Jew. "So what's this?" "This is from Home Depot." Unfortunately, Jews have often become so good with their minds, so good with our minds, that we fail to understand the importance of self-defense in a physical way. So the first opinion says Moses used a fist. It's not something anybody wants to use, but sometimes the only way to respond to immoral violence is through moral violence. California, not so popular always to say, but as I tell my friends, what stopped Hitler was not a poem from Winston Churchill. "Dear Adolf, I love you. I know you're suffering from trauma." We have great, great trauma therapists in the West. We'll deal with your anger. We'll also teach you not to scream when you speak, Adolf. We'll teach you how to calm down. And Hitler said, "Oh, that's such a beautiful message. Let me stop the war." There was not a bouquet of roses and a poem. It was moral violence that stopped immoral violence. It's not something anybody ever wants. Every day we say, "Oseh shalom, bimramav v'yaseh shalom." But Moses understood, in a world that is often confusing murderers with victims and victims with murderers, it's sometimes only the fist. That was one opinion. Another opinion said, let's use a shovel. And the shovel represents the ability to build skyscrapers. The shovel represents the tool of construction. This is the idea of many Jews who said we have to build alliances. We have to build relationships. We have to use diplomacy. We have to become powerful in commerce and in business and in politics and in academia and in journalism and in the arts and in the humanities. Let us use our mouths, our relationships, our friendships to be able to influence and educate the world against anti-Semitism. This was a second group of Jews. Diplomacy was the name of the game. And then there's the third group of Jews who said God's name is what we need. The power of the Jewish people, what they had that the others didn't have, is the Torah and the mitzvahs. The blueprint that God gave the Jewish people and said, this is your path to eternity. This is your path to freedom, to life, to health, to survival. Scientifically, you may say, how can Shabbat or tefillin, or Jewish education, or charity, or matzah, or shofar, or lulav, or studying Torah, or praying, or lighting candles, or mikveh, or mezuzah, how can these guarantee eternity? Good question. But everybody knows in science you can't argue with the facts. That 3,500 years later, the one thing the Jewish people had that the other empires did not have is not a country or an army, that they all had, or a culture. It was Yiddishkeit, Torah and mitzvahs that we had. So the third opinion is God's name. That's how Moses killed him. Our generation is a generation that needs to make peace between the three opinions, because they're all true. Elu ve'elu, the Talmud says, these and these are the words of the living God. There are moments when we need to have a fist, and we should never be embarrassed and never be apologetic when we need to use a fist in order to save children from being blown up to pieces. It's enough of Jews apologizing for the right to exist, for the right to defend little children. And every person with influence, and every person has influence, needs to speak that truth, speak truth to power. That sometimes the only thing we can do when there's immoral violence, somebody's coming with a knife and wants to murder a mother and children. In the last month, 3 families lost 2 siblings. And in the last case, the mother too. Moses says, use a fist. But there's another important element, and that is using a shovel. Jews can't be the only ones to fight anti-Semitism. Because anti-Semitism is not a threat only for Jewish people, it's a threat for humanity. Because a world that has no place for Jews has no place for humanity. And history has shown that it started with Jews, it never ended with Jews. Stalin began with Jews, he didn't end with Jews, he killed 40 million of his own. Hitler began with Jews, but he didn't end with Jews. The suicide bombers began in Israel, but didn't end in Israel. People were saying suicide bombing is an Israeli issue. Then came 9/11. Madrid, London, Mumbai. It spread all over the world. It started in Israel, didn't end in Israel. And there's a reason for it. The Jewish people in history are like the miners' canaries. You know, when miners need to go down to mine and excavate and find coal, they first send down canary birds. You know why? Because canary birds are sensitive to noxious, poisonous fumes. If the canary birds don't come up, you know it's dangerous for the miners to descend. If the miners can go down, the canaries have to come back. The Jews are the miners, canaries of history. Where there is toxicity, where there is poison, Jews are targeted first. But when Jews are targeted, you should know this is a place that's going to become dangerous for all people, for all minorities. God told Abraham, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. People think it's just some spiritual prophecy. It's actually one of the best predictions of history. Go to any country in the world, and you want to know if it's a good place to live? Ask one question: how do they treat Jews? Syria hates Jews, but what does Syria do to its own people? Iran hates Jews, but how are minorities in Iran treated? or women in Iran treated. Gaza hates Jews, but how do the Hamas treat the Gazans who may be dissidents, throwing them off roofs and torturing them? God told Abraham, look at a country and see if they bless Jews. It's a litmus test, it's a blessed place, it's a normal place. If they curse Jews, many will suffer. This is what Jews have to educate the world. We need that shovel. We need to explain to every child in every school, whether it's in California or in any other state and across the world, explain to them that a world that is saturated with bigotry and racism, it could be to Jews, everyone is in danger. Every good and innocent human being is in danger. And then there is the third opinion of how Moses killed the Egyptian. Shema Mefarish. He used God's name. The ultimate power of the Jewish people is our spiritual connection to God Almighty. Because the Greeks and the Romans were more powerful. But the celebration of Yiddishkeit on a daily basis of mothers and fathers, bequeathing it to their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, is something that allowed the Jews to be here thousands of years later and be here with vibrancy and strength and vigor and stamina. There was a Jew that was Benjamin Wurzburger. He was from Hungary. He was only a kid, 15 years old, when he was taken from one camp to another camp to another camp. He was in 7 camps, ended up in Mauthausen. And Benjamin once shared, he said that the SS commander who would do the appel, would do the count in the morning, was particularly sadistic. And every morning before he gave them their breakfast, which consisted of a tiny piece of bread and something that you can call soup, but it was more dirt and filth and mud than soup, before he gave the food, he distributed the food, he would give them the same speech every morning. And he would say to them, I know that you Jews are dreaming of coming to Jerusalem one day. I want you to know that the only way you're going to get to Jerusalem is through the smoke of the crematoria. Every day this was his speech before breakfast. And Benjamin, a 15-year-old boy, would respond right afterwards with 3 words. He didn't say those 3 words loud because he didn't want the bullet in his head. He said them to himself, but he said them every day. And those 3 words were, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. So this SS sadistic commander would say, you're going to the crematoria, and from there to Jerusalem with smoke, and he would say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Benjamin survived. He survived. He made illegal aliyah. The British sent him to Cyprus. Cyprus, he met another survivor, a beautiful girl named Miriam. They got married. They moved to Israel. They moved to Afula, where he went into construction. At the age of 70, he retired. And he was looking for a job. That's what a Jew does at 70. They look for a job. They have time to make some money. And then he thought to himself, every day I said next year in Jerusalem, I don't only want to visit Jerusalem, I want to go live there. So at 70, he picks up with his wife, and they move to Jerusalem. But you need a job. He notices this is 1970, and he's 70 years old. And he is 70 years old. And he goes to the Kotel, and he notices that it's very dirty. The tourists throw all their candy wrappers there. And the wall is dirty, and the floor is dirty. So he goes to the municipality, and he says, can I become the janitor at the Kotel? The guy says, you're 70. He says, test me for 2 weeks. You don't have to pay me. 2 weeks I'll work. If you don't like me, we'll leave. 2 weeks he works, and they like the job, and they hire him. And he becomes a full-time janitor at the Kotel. Every morning he's there 6 a.m. mopping and sweeping. He got the name Ha'ish al HaKotel, the man at the Kotel, Benjamin Wurzburger. As time passed and groups started to come, he became like a spiritual preacher and mentor. He would tell people, he would tell kids and teenagers his story. And how he said every day next year in Jerusalem. He did this for 25 years. 25 years he did this. Sunshine, rain, August heat of Jerusalem, December cold of Jerusalem. He was there, he would put on his uniform, and when they asked him, do you get bored? He says, bored? When I said every day in Mathaus and Lashon Haba B'Yishlem, and here I could be at the palace of the king and clean it, I'm not bored, I'm honored, I'm thrilled. Last year, after Sukkot, the 18th day of Cheshvan, they made a big birthday party for him, celebrating his 90th birthday. And a day later, he passed away. And he was interred right near Jerusalem. And I thought that this captures so much the spirit of a people. And as I was thinking about the story, and I came here this evening, and we had a little VIP program where Jews were eating. And as I was talking over there a little earlier, I saw there was a woman sitting in front of me, and she understood the Yiddish. And I saw her attentiveness. And after the speech, she came over to me, and she introduced herself. And she told me that she was born in 1922, which means she is 101 years old. She was born in Latvia, almost 101 years old. But who's counting? Went through 5 concentration camps, lost everyone in the family, besides a sister who just passed away recently. And then she looked at me and said, and Rabbi Jacobson, you know how I survived? I said, no. And she said, because every day I told myself, I'm not going to die, I'm going to live. And I can hear an echo of the words of King David in Psalms, in Tehillim. We say it in the Hallel. King David says on behalf of the Jewish people, Loi amus ki echye v'asata ma'asikon. I will not live. Rather, I will die. Loi amus ki echye. Generation and generation again, it was easy for the Jewish people to say, surrender, physically or spiritually or religiously or emotionally. But we said, Loi amos ki echye, and it's also true for so many individuals sitting in this room. Many of you, many of us have been through difficult situations in life. Sometimes very difficult situations. Some situations that nobody besides you knows, and sometimes even you don't know it because you reduced it to your subconscious memories. But there was a voice in you that always said, Loi amos ki echye, I'm not going to die, I'm going to live. I asked Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, one of the world leaders in the study of trauma. And I asked him if he ever becomes cynical. You've seen so much pain and so much trauma, dealt with so much PTSD, and so many victims of terrible situations. Do you ever become cynical? Do you ever say people are just too corrupt? And he told me no. I said, how? And he said, when I listen to my patients and I see that despite the fact that scientifically they were broken down, and when you punch a machine 1,000 times, the machine breaks. They should be broken. They should be dead. But there's a voice inside of them that says, I'm going to live. I'm not going to die, I'm going to live. He says, how could you be cynical when you see that? So I said, Mr. Van der Kolk, you call yourself an atheist. But what you're seeing now is something that can't be broken. How do you explain it? He said, I don't explain it. I just see it. I said, maybe you're not such an atheist after all, because if there's a part of a person that can't be broken, what does that mean? If there's a part of a person that observed all the brokenness and does not be broken, It means there's a piece of infinity. There's something transcendent, there's something divine in a person. The Jewish people were the experts in holding on to that, in believing in it individually and collectively. So tonight I also want to salute my new young 100-year-old friend, Fenny Kress. I know you don't like honor, but it's not really about you. You have to understand. You're a representation of a people, of a zeitgeist, of a generation, of a history. Children, teenagers, youth who struggle with a lot. It's not so easy today, life. We're not in concentration camps. You know, this is the first time in history more people are dying from obesity than from hunger. You know that? More people are dying from Coca-Cola and babka and cheesecake. It's unbelievable. Thousands of years people died from famine. Today there's people dying from famine, but much more people are dying from too much food. And yet we have our challenges. Collectively and individually, so much confusion. There's so much depression. There's so much despair. People don't know who they are. People don't know what they believe in. People don't understand their deeper selves. So when we look at like a person like you, Fanny, or your Jewish name Tzipora, we learn how to be a bird that knows how to fly. Tzipora is a bird. The bird knows sometimes you walk on the ground, but never get stuck only in a terrestrial perspective. Have that ability to soar and see the world from a bird's eye view. Then we can say, I shall not die. I want to live. So this was the third view of how Moses managed to defeat the Egyptian. There is the fist, there is the shovel, and there is God's name. A number of years ago, I got a very interesting call. The Pentagon arranges every year a retreat for all the chief of chaplains of the U.S. Army. Chief of chaplains are those who are responsible for the emotional and religious well-being of all the troops. The Navy, the Air Force, and all of the soldiers, all of the ground troops. And they go to Hilton Head, South Carolina for a full week retreat. It's like the CHABAD has the Kinus HaShluchim, their Shluchim convention. The Pentagon has their Shluchim convention. Now usually, he's already also in the next world. Billy Graham would give the keynote address to inspire them. One year, the chief of chaplains by the name of Douglas S. Carver said, "We heard Mr. Graham enough. I would like to hear from the Jews. After all, the founder of Christianity was a Jewish boy. Christianity is an outgrowth. Let's hear what the Jews have to say." So he called up a Hasidic Jew who worked in the U.S. Army for decades by the name of Yankel Goldstein. And by the way, the only one in the Army allowed with a beard. And they asked him, he says, "Jacob, Colonel Goldstein, who is the Jewish Billy Graham?" He didn't know that Jews exactly don't have the same style of preachers, and you know what I mean? It's a whole different thing. The rabbi gets up and you fall asleep, as I explained earlier. It's a different system. So he says, "Who's the Jewish Billy Graham?" He says, "I'll get back to you." That night I get a call from Colonel Goldstein. He says, "Rabbi Wawa, are you the Jewish Billy Graham?" "You Mashiach? What are you talking about?" He said, "I need you to be the Pentagon is going to call you. You're the Jewish Billy Graham, okay?" He said, "Okay, just don't tell my mother-in-law. I need them to stop sending checks because I converted." I get a call, "Yeah, the Jewish Billy Graham, of course, I got smicha for that, I was ordained for that." They invited me to give the keynote address to thousands of chief of chaplains of the entire Army, Air Force, Navy, etc. I remember I came to Hilton Head, South Carolina. Everybody was saluting everybody else. I also started to salute. And Colonel Goldstein told me, stop, because there's a certain way how you salute. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star. And if you do the wrong salute, you have to do push-ups. So just stop saluting. I meet Douglas Carver, the chief of chaplains, and he thanks me for coming. And the keynote is 8 o'clock in the morning. I knew right away it's not a Jewish event. Jewish events, 8 o'clock in the evening, people start coming, and then you have to eat, and you have to drink, and you have to shluas. And they call it a keynote because they give the speaker a key and a note. And on the note it says, when you finish, lock up. So I asked him, what time would you like me to be down here? I'll come down 7:45. I'll be 15 minutes early, which for a Jewish event is impressive. And the speaker is there 15 minutes early. He looked at me, he says, no, you should be here at 6. So I said, what should I do from 6 to 8? Goldstein gave me a kick. You don't ask a question in the army. 6 it was. 6 it was. 2 hours you sit and you wait. You learn silence. Somebody once asked Elie Wiesel if Judaism has a tradition of silence, because everyone is always talking. He said, yeah, but we don't talk about it. So I came down and I was just silent. And 8 o'clock sharp was the keynote, and I was introduced. And I have to say there was tension in the air, because this was the first time a Jew was addressing such an audience. The yarmulke appeared. I finished, and Douglas Carver got up to speak, and he thanked me. And he said something to the crowd. He said, I'm wondering, when did Rabbi Jacobson learn how to speak? He speaks with passion and with zeal. And now I think I know. He probably spent time at the Baptists. Because if you ever, I don't know if you ever heard Baptist preachers, right? But they know how to preach. They give it to you. And I have to say, that crowd, a lot of Baptists, and Carver himself is a Baptist, it's very different than a Jewish crowd. Now, I have to say this, I love Jews, I'm not an anti-Semite. It's much easier to speak to non-Jews than to speak to Jews. You know that, right? There's a reason for it. First of all, Jews, they all have opinions on what you say. They always have opinions, right? They hear a joke, and I heard that already. And if they didn't hear it, they're like, I'm going to use it next week. Jews don't listen, Jews have commentary. That's number 1. Second thing is, most Jews sit like this. Do you know that? You know that most Jews sit like this? I have experience. I was in almost 700 communities. Most Jews sit like this. You know why they sit like this? You think it's comfortable? It's uncomfortable. Why do they sit like this? Because they're telling you a message. You're not getting close. You're not getting close. I have a bulletproof vest. Don't think you're penetrating. You're not the first chacham. My wife tried. My mother-in-law tried. My therapist tried. The fundraiser tried. The rabbi. You're not going to get to me. You know, it takes me 40 minutes to get the shmigegi to put down his hands. 40 minutes. Some guys are still like this. Do you know that? They're still like this. They didn't get the message yet. The Gentiles, they sit like this. They're like this. Stab me. The next thing. For Jews, it's hard to give feedback. Do you know that? It's very hard for Jews to give feedback because they think you can ask them for a loan and an investment. The best you get from Jews is shikayach, shikayach, shikayach. They don't even lower their head too much because it's vulnerable. They like have a stiff neck. But those guys, they're like in the middle of the meeting, yeah, Rabbi, yay, I love you, God bless you. And they're finishing verses. Another thing, Jews don't read the Bible, you know? They don't read the Bible. They finish verses. I was talking and they're like, hallelujah, hallelujah. It was a machai. Anyway, I finished. Carver says, where did he learn to speak like this? Rabbi Jacobson must have spent time at the Baptists. That's where he learned it. And everybody was giggling, like you're giggling. And I was standing at the stage right near Mr. Carver. And as a good Jew, I started to feel guilty. Because what's the definition of a Jew? If he doesn't feel guilty, he blames himself. In fact, I only found in my life one Jew who doesn't have guilt, and he's in therapy for it. I was telling you. So I'm standing there, and Carver is saying this, and suddenly I feel guilty. What do I feel guilty? He publicly said that I learned at the Baptists. Now, baptism is a form of Christianity. What's a Jewish boy from Brooklyn learning about Christianity? We're not supposed to. So I'm like, you have to protest. I'm talking to myself, you're an idiot. The guy is joking. Yeah, but even as a joke. You know how Jews go, right? I'm all in this. I'm like doing therapy with myself. Like he was joking, but even as a joke, you have to protest. But I'm like, he's a 4-star general. I can't interrupt him, and if I do, it's 900 push-ups. I'm a slim, good-looking, athletic guy, but 900 push-ups is pushing it. So what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, back again. Then if I protest, they won't invite me back again. It's not good for business. It's not the way you do it. You thank the chief of chaplains for his compliment. And I'm like back and forth, and it's all on the stage in a millisecond. Then I tell myself, you know, the reason that Jews are here today is because we sacrificed our lives for many centuries not to accept other religions. There would be no Jews left. And unfortunately, many religions tried to force us with the sword and have killed many, many Jews, and our ancestors sacrificed themselves. And here it's America. I have to say something. And I decided at the end they didn't invite me for my looks or my brains. They invited me as a representative of the Jewish people. I had butterflies in my stomach, and I interrupted him in the middle of his speech. And I said, General Carver, you're making a mistake. The Baptists learned it from us. What happened at that moment was astounding. They all broke out into a thundering applause, including Mr. Carver. I'm thinking to myself, I don't understand. When they said that I was by the Baptists, they giggled. When I said the Baptists learned it from us, they were all applauding me. And then I realized, the world respects Jews who respect Judaism. The world is embarrassed by Jews who are embarrassed by Judaism. And if there will come a day, and there will come a day, when the world loves Israel, when the world respects Israel, when the world embraces Israel, when the world respects, embraces, and admires the Jewish people, it's when the Jewish people will respect, admire, and embrace their religion, their heritage, their history, their faith, their God, and their Torah. Thank you very much.
So one of the pre-submitted questions are as follows. I am a Jew searching for my Jewish identity. What would you recommend would be the best place to start on my journey?
That's a beautiful question. And I think I would suggest 3 things. Number 1, to start studying. You know, say, once asked a Jew, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? And he said, I don't know and I don't care. Ignorance breeds apathy. So I would suggest, start studying, start reading, start learning Torah. Once a week, once a day, join a class, join a website, whatever it is, but start studying, because knowledge builds and expands our horizon and develops our consciousness. That's number 1. The second thing I would suggest is to join a community that speaks to you, that's inspiring to you, whether it's once a week, whether it's once a month, but to become part of a community, to see Jewish life in practice. And the third thing I would suggest is to start to take one Jewish deed, one Jewish mitzvah, and start executing it in your life. Whether it's giving charity every day, whether it's wrapping tefillin every day, whether it's lighting Shabbat candles, whether it's making Kiddush Friday night, whether it's praying every day or meditating every day. But find one mitzvah and start implementing it. Those are the three things with which I would begin, and you'll already be thirsty. And we search for more water, and you'll continue to grow.
Thank you very much. So again, ushers are handing out pens and papers. If anybody has any questions, ready to go, just hold it over your head and they'll be collected. Another reminder that there's water underneath everybody's seat. Question again, pre-submitted.
If somebody wants to ask with their mouth, it's also fine. They don't have to write. Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, you were beyond good. Thank you for everything.
Tell my mother-in-law. What are you telling me? She's telling me. What's that gonna help?
I have a very...
But thank you.
What do you do with people that they're Jewish and they feel that they know everything and they're very Jewish?
Oh, they're Jewish, yeah.
Well, let's educate people because they're giving their biases and their stories that they're not even close to being Jewish. Like, for example, people that they study they think that they study either Jewish Kite or Kabbalah or whatever, and they give you the story that they're super Jewish and they're not even close. Like last week I had a horrible fight with a person who was telling that Moshe Rabbeinu was a very mean person, and it cost me the friendship with a friend 20 years. I said, what are you telling me about? I mean, you should at least learn the story right. And then they're going with other people telling those stories, and you get lost in translation.
Yeah, by the way, Sigmund Freud, his last book is Moses. He wrote it before he died, and he developed a theory that Moses wasn't Jewish. I'm just saying, so this guy's not the first one. Generally speaking, let me tell you a rule. I have found from my experience that debating people is usually ineffective, because people become defensive. It's like in a marriage, you know, when a husband accuses a wife and a wife accuses a husband, everybody just puts on a bulletproof vest and we dig into our positions and there's no real communication. So whenever I see that a person is just fixed on something, they're not ready to budge, they're not open, I'll give them empathy, I'll give them love. I'm not going to argue because I want to be effective. I don't want to be right, I want to be effective. You understand the difference? It's important. But what we could do is plant seeds. Plant seeds and say, listen, I was once at a panel and somebody was giving advice on Jewish education. It was ridiculous advice. So I asked him, I said, could you name all the Torah portions from the Bible? Could you name the names of all these 53 portions in the Bible, the 5 books? Can you name them? He said, no. I said, imagine if somebody gets up to speak about Shakespeare and he can't name the names of Shakespeare's plays. What kind of expert can he be on Shakespeare? So how can you be an expert on Judaism if you don't even know the names of the portions? Why do people think that Judaism doesn't even deserve the dignity that somebody who speaks about it should know at least the names of the portions? So it's good to try to plant a seed and say, you know, maybe there's more to learn, maybe to offer a book, maybe to send a podcast or a link to a lecture or a class or an essay that can enlighten them. And it plants seeds, because if somebody is in a very stubborn position and they're not ready to budge, what am I going to gain by telling them something else when they're just going to get upset and angry? So choose your battles, and it's unfortunate, but what I would do is I would find an intelligent book or essay or video or podcast or whatever it is and send it to the person. They'll either watch it or not watch it, they'll either read it or not, but this can maybe open them up. That's what I would do. Remember also, when people see things privately in their bedroom, they can't be as defensive. If I'm reading something in my own bed or listening to something, right, even if it's triggering me, I don't have who to fight with, so I have to think about it. So that's also, but generally, debates when somebody is very, very stubborn, I don't find them to be useful. So you have to think about how can I affect this person where they are right now? I'm not looking to be right. I'm looking to be a positive influence in somebody's life. If this is where somebody is, this is where they are. I just had somebody curse me out for a certain position I took about something a little unpopular or a lot unpopular. And I realized, I told him a different opinion. He says, there's no other opinion. The moment somebody says there's no other opinion, you can see how open-minded they are, right? So I said, I love you. I love you. And if you ever need anything, you can call me. And if you ever want to hear about another opinion, you can also call me. That's it. Don't stoop down to negativity. It's not healthy. It's also not worth your serenity. That's my opinion. But sometimes your blood can boil, I know. And don't read all the newspapers, yeah.
Okay, so thank God, many submissions. Thank you so much for that, Rabbi Jacobson. What is your view on forgiveness and forgetting?
That's like a big question. What's my view on forgetting and forgiving? Or maybe let's put it differently. Can you forgive if you don't forget? And if you're Jewish, you don't forget. We don't forget anything, right? Yeah. So if somebody apologizes, and somebody is remorseful, and somebody is genuine, we always encourage, the Torah encourages a person to try to forgive. But you can't force yourself to forgive. Forgiveness is a voluntary experience. Because if it's forced, it's not forgiving. So we try to cultivate forgiveness if somebody asks for it. If somebody is continuing to do something harmful, you're not allowed to forgive them. Because then you're helping them out. If somebody asks and apologizes, it's a wonderful thing to forgive. If somebody's going to use your forgiveness to continue to hurt people, then your forgiveness becomes a negative thing. Now the question is, if somebody doesn't continue, but they don't ask forgiveness, should you forgive them? That's a very personal place. If you're in a place where you could, that's amazing. But you have to be ready for that. Sometimes, if somebody was abused as a child, let's say molested, and people say you have to forgive, it's not fear. Because people who were raped or molested, it's a form of murder. Just say, forgive the person who killed you. It doesn't work that way. It's a long process. But there is an element to forgiveness that's important to cultivate, and that is, I don't want you to live inside of me anymore. In other words, forgiveness in the sense of, I'm not going to have you play a role in my life anymore. I'm not. I'm letting go. That's a very, very important step of healing. I don't know if it's called forgiveness. It's called stop defining yourself by the other person, which is not an letting it go. Sipara says, let it go. Let it go.
Thank you.
But that's not easy. Sometimes we need a lot of help and a lot of healing to be able to let it go, because if there's trauma inside of me, you can't snap your finger and tell the trauma to disappear. There's sometimes very intensive healing modalities that are necessary for it, and you have to respect it. And you have to respect it in others. The most important quality in forgiveness is empathy. Empathy towards yourself, and then you can have empathy towards the people around you.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions, submissions surrounding the observance, the openness of actually wearing a yarmulke and tzitzis and mezuzah. So this particular family who has begun to be more observant, has young children that will potentially wear yarmulke and tzitzis openly. What would you say to those that are challenged and told that they should not, in fact, pursue this sort of lifestyle, in effect, welcoming sort of anti-Semitic behavior?
Okay, so I have found from my travels and experiences that people actually respect people who have genuine values. Think about yourself. If you have a partner in business, okay, and you know that that partner takes his religion seriously, takes his marriage seriously, takes his God seriously, takes the Torah seriously, I would respect that. Most people respect that, even in the secular world, because it means there's a person with principles, a person who won't just sell his God and his values for money or for any other gain. There was a Jewish comedian who once said, "I am a person with principles, and if you don't like my principles, I have other ones." So I think it's not just a good thing, but it actually has a tremendous advantage in many areas of life, because people ultimately respect integrity. They respect people who respect themselves and their faith and have real values. I know a person who will never ever cheat on his wife. There's respect there. There's somebody who will never ever do something to harm another person. Somebody you can offer him as much money in the world. There's certain lines you won't cross. That's a person you want to do business with. That's a person you want to befriend. Now, of course, if it's an environment that may be dangerous, sometimes you have to be careful. But generally speaking, with people who are good people, I think when they see that your values are genuine, they'll have much more admiration for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Loud, just speak loud.
Mark and Venus had converted to Judaism, and his best friend was Rabbi Judah.
The prince.
So,
One second, let me give you the microphone.
how do we get leaders today to be like Marcus Aurelius?
It's a beautiful question. She's quoting one of the Roman emperors, Antoninus, Marcus Aurelius, who was best friends with Rabbi Judah the Prince. Just one correction. According to the Talmud, he didn't convert, but he was very, very close to Rabbi Judah the Prince. How do we get leaders today to be that way? Excellent question. The answer is, and it's a little bit of a painful answer, and I'll tell you why. The first chief rabbi of Israel was Rabbi Cook, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook. You with me? You hear me? And he once said something very profound. He said, "Why is the world obsessed with the Jewish people till today?" He died in the 30s, 1935. He said, every culture has its time in history. It's like a play. The actor comes out, does his part or her part, and goes backstage. Next scene, another actor. Next scene, another actor. So you have the Egyptians, you have the Assyrians, you have the Babylonians, you have the Persians, you have the Greeks, you have the Romans. And then they go backstage, they're gone. And the Jews are still in center stage. Why? You know what he answered? He said, because we're stuttering. We're stuttering. And the world is saying, no, we're not ready to say our part. So the actor is on the stage, and he's scared to say what he has to say. He's like, no, no, no. 4,000 years of stuttering. So they say, no, no, no. What he meant to say was, the Jews are afraid of their own message. The message of Sinai is so powerful. We're ambivalent. We're sometimes afraid of our own message, so we stutter. That's why we live in a world today that Jews can have an incredible, positive, moral, spiritual, social, and psychological influence. But we're afraid. We stutter. Don't notice me. I'm just like you. I just like golf and sushi and a couple of dollars. I believe that if Jews would have the courage not to stutter, to be able to say, this is what we learned at Sinai. This is going to make healthier families, healthier communities, less suicide among teenagers, less depression, less divorce, healthier people, more responsible people. This is how we did it 4,000 years. Talk about it, communicate it, teach it with humility but with pride. We can create such friends. We can educate such people. I went to a school in New Jersey, 800 kids, not Jewish, a few Jewish kids arranged it. And I explained to them living a life of hate versus living a life of love. And they were all sitting there. These are all 16-year-old vulnerable New Jersey kids. But we have to teach. We have to inspire. We were sent to the world to inspire the world, not to stutter.
Thank you. And because we have 2 minutes left, we got a few questions on the state of Israel.
One of the things that as Jews were taught is to adopt and accept the rules of society we live in, basically to become a part of the society. But that also become a curse for us to assimilate. How do you see these two work together in the future as the time goes, the time of digital world, and the fact that the society is coming together closer, and the younger generation connecting to each other closer and closer? How do you see that curse and the blessing?
The Jewish people always had a policy which did us very well. And that is, whenever we lived in a country, we tried to live as loyal citizens, following the laws of the land, being loyal, being respectful, and caring and trying to help out in any way possible. But Jews never forgot who they are. So the moment the law of the land demanded from them to throw away their Judaism, this was a red line they didn't cross. Because they realized a human king and a divine king, you listen to the divine king, not to the human king. I think when we have that balance in order, it's very healthy for the Jewish people and for the land. Look what Jews gave America. Look what Jews gave any other country they lived in. Ultimately, in many countries, they were rewarded with expulsion, like in Spain, like Germany, like Russia, like Poland, like Hungary, etc. When we respect the land and we're loyal citizens, but we don't become people who lose our sense of self. And if somebody smiles to us, we'll sell them our mother, our father, our grandmother, our God, and our history, just to be able to take a picture with somebody who smiled. Then we become ambivalent, we become confused. We don't know who we are, we don't know what the boundaries are. When a Jew has those boundaries, we're loyal citizens, we want to be loyal citizens. The Torah says, always pray and be there for the welfare of your government. That's our duty. But it's our duty as citizens. The Jews don't forget though, that when it's suddenly they're demanded to sell their souls, that's not going to work. It's not going to work, you can't do that. And therefore there's a certain border, there's a certain boundary, ad kan. When that balance is maintained, it's good for everybody.
Okay, one final question. What is the role of the State of Israel play in the discourse of anti-Semitism and pro-Semitism, and the importance of making Aliyah?
Well, it happens to be that today Israel has become the Jew, the symbol of the Jew. You used to hate the Jew, now you hate Israel. It's very obvious. Israel has become the replacement for the Jew that you hate. And you'll see that wherever there's anti-Semitism, the first thing that is criticized and delegitimized is Israel. Now it's important to say, to disagree with Israel's policies is not anti-Semitism. Most Jews disagree with many of Israel's policies. Israelis don't stop fighting about Israeli policies. They're not anti-Semites, they're good Jews. Anti-Semitism is when suddenly Jews don't have a right to exist. They don't have a right to a country. There's 192 countries in the United Nations. There's only one country whose legitimacy is questioned every single day. And it's not Iran, and it's not Afghanistan, and it's not Syria. You'll guess which one it is. And when somebody becomes obsessed with that, and when Israel makes one mistake, I don't know if you know, the United Nations is called United. The only thing that unites United Nations is when they have to condemn Israel. There's nothing else they're united about. There's more condemnations in a year against Israel than there is together against Russia, and against Syria, and against Darfur, and against Iran, and against the Congo. When you see that, it's obviously malicious. It's not just criticizing a country. We all criticize policies in America. We criticize the president, we criticize a congressman, we criticize a senator. It's part of a healthy discourse. Political leaders are not holy people. They're not above criticism. And Israel should also be criticized. Israel's leaders, Israel's politicians, Israel's prime ministers, Israel's presidents, and anybody there. What's the big deal? That's not anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism becomes when Israel is completely put on a different standard. when it can never be right, when lies and blood libels are spread in ways that are unfathomable, and people get away with it, that's when you see that Israel became the target, became the Jew. And therefore, today, it's not a question anymore of Israel just as a country. It's a question of Jews standing up towards hate, towards bigotry. It's extremely important to educate our children. It's extremely important to inculcate them with a healthy sense of dignity and awareness and justice, to fight indoctrination and foolishness, and also to be able to stand up to haters. Because when people, as Elie Wiesel used to say, evil does not thrive because evil people do evil things. It's because good people are quiet. They say, I don't have time, I don't want to get involved. But people have influence. People with money have influence. People with the gift of gab have influence. Writers have influence. Thinkers, sages, professors, teachers. Every person has influence in their sphere. One person has more influence, one person has less influence. People need to realize that we're here in the world to make a difference, not just to retreat into our own orbits. And when people stand up to hatred and bigotry, when they educate, when they enlighten, when they inspire, when they empower, it makes a big difference.
Thank you very, very much. If any questions were answered, one question was, will you be speaking at the JLI retreat this year? With that, we head over to
Thank you so much. What a tremendous evening together. We are counting the days to Shavuot, when we receive the Torah. For the 3,335th time, we recommit ourselves to the eternal bond between the Jewish nation and Hashem. My name is Mati Fratkin. I grew up here in this city as a young shliach of the Rebbe, who sent my parents to bring the warmth and love of Yiddishkeit to Es Diego. I grew up watching this and living it. When Sarla and I married, we committed our lives to continue this proud shlichus of passionate and positive Yiddishkeit that we can help transmit to the next generation. So in conclusion, I'd like to wrap this up with a motion forward. Let us share the love of our Yiddishkeit. Let our children, our friends, and our neighbors see that we are proud to be Jewish and we love it. On Shavuot this year, when Hashem asks us again, who is going to be the guarantors of the Jewish future, let us each do our part in making sure we are there, fully committed. Let us bring our families, our friends, and all those we can touch to be there to receive the Torah with love and with passion. Imagine a shul where there are more children ready to receive the Torah than adults in the crowd. May our love for each other, may our love for Hashem bring so much light to this world that it brings an end to the darkness and the evil that the world has seen over the years. May we merit the ultimate goodness, a world of Mashiach with only goodness and kindness, witnessing Hashem's vision for all of creation. Thank you to Rabbi Jacobson. Thank you so much. There should be a nachas to Bridget Galgut. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this happen. A good night.
I want to thank you, Rabbi Fratkin, for giving me the opportunity of having Bridget's honor be upon this evening. You were very much a part of it, and only wishing you good health. Amen. Baruch Hashem.
I enjoyed it immensely, and especially the way he does it. It is so palatable. People can really imagine the things
and the humor
and do them.
An amazing evening. Rabbi Jacobson is an incredible speaker, and I hope that everybody here felt that it was a very meaningful evening and will enhance their interest in both Jewish education and their own Judaism. Thanks.